just as a recap of what we want to cover today, we run customer summits a couple of times a year for Lemongrass customers, and the whole objective is to have people share stories, share experience. And one of the requests from the last customer summit was to hear more about what it's like for some of our customers to operate on RISE today, and specifically around this idea of a RISE wrapper. So how can you enhance or at least complete the services that you get standard from the SAP RISE? So both Jordan and Kevin have gone through that experience, and they're going to talk us through those today. For people who maybe aren't that familiar with Lemongrass, I know there are a couple on the call who aren't. Just a quick reminder who we are first. We've been in business since 2008, helping customers, only SAP customers, move to cloud and adopt cloud. We've been working with AWS since 2010, with Azure and Google since 2020. And ultimately, over the years, we've built a lot of experience and helped customers, fundamentally achieve what they want to get out of cloud. And a big thing for us is, using technology to get there. And you'll hear a little bit about that in the discussions around this RISE wrapper. Our services, again, for those who don't know, we start from advisory, from the early stages of figuring out what you need to do. And certainly when it comes to adopting RISE, we see a lot of customers want some help, some ideas, some experience that other customers have had to navigate and plot out a roadmap for the adoption of SAP's cloud services. We also help customers move towards clean core using some of our technology. We call it LCP AI for Clean Core, and that allows us to scan and remediate and just plan a way forward of how you're going to clean up the existing ECC systems. We've got a data practice which helps customers, again, another big area of dare I say confusion, certainly variability is how to adopt and align with SAP's data plans. We've got a team that helps customers do that. And very importantly as well, BTP, something that's becoming increasingly important. Everything from integration suite through the SAP build, we help customers achieve that. And then, of course, our heritage, our core capability of migrating customers to cloud and running operations along with them, which is where we're going to focus today. And last slide for me is really just positioning what the RISE wrapper is for people who haven't heard the term. At a very simple level, when you buy a RISE contract from SAP, there's a very, very clear and very specific RISE that SAP publish. And that's there's a limit to what you can do with that RISE. There are some optional add-ons that you can purchase from SAP, but beyond that, the answer from SAP is you've got to figure out how to fill in the rest of the any gaps you have in your operating model, and that's where we have developed with customers like Growmark and Florida Crystals. We have developed this service which allows us to reintroduce a bit of a white glove sense back into the operate. Without going into too much detail on it, just that's the way to maybe picture this service. Obviously, we can deep dive that separately, but I think it's great to hear from customers, and that's why you've all signed in today, is to listen to people who've actually gone through this and some of their experience. So I suppose first off, I'd like to introduce Jordan. And Jordan, if you want to just maybe introduce yourself to begin with, and give us a little bit of background initially into Growmark, if you don't mind. It's a company that we've worked with for a long time, I'm very fond of. Maybe give a bit of introduction to Growmark and a little bit about your story on your RISE adoption journey.
Definitely, yeah. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming to listen today. So my name is Jordan Coons, and I'm the director of our internal IT portfolio team at Growmark. Growmark is an agriculture cooperative based in the Midwest United States, and our member companies are other retail agriculture businesses. So we serve kind of as wholesale distribution for all agriculture inputs that you would need to run a farm. in the United States and Canada. The team that I head up at Growmark is essentially all of the software applications that support that line of business for the company. So SAP is in there, ServiceNow is in there, custom software development, data and analytics, all of those kind of roll up through our group. And Eamon, did you want me to kind of just jump into our experience with kind of
Yeah,
SAP,
I think.
our journey and that, or?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've been working with you since I think 2017,
Yeah.
and we've seen you as you've evolved towards essentially cloud native, now towards Rise. So obviously we started the conversation when you were plotting out what you were going to do via an advisory service we worked with you. So maybe start there and how you saw this requirement and how it's going for you as you've adopted it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll maybe even back up just a couple years because I think that context is a little important. So we initially started our SAP implementation back in 2015, and we took our first business unit live in 2016. That was a long project of implementing core SAP ECC for our business. We did it on a business unit to business unit basis, and we were originally hosted by SAP in their HEC environment. Um, so we started the implementation in the cloud right from the beginning. Um, After some challenges with the HEC environment, I think there was a pretty significant outage. At one point in time, we decided that we wanted a little bit more control over the environment that our SAP application was hosted in, and that was, to Eamon's point, when we were introduced to Lemongrass, use them to migrate from HEC over to our own AWS environment. And since that point in time, Lemongrass has essentially been helping us with our operate in the AWS environment for our SAP application ever since. Pretty successfully, I would say, even. So, fast forward to 2024, early 2024, we were looking at the S4 HANA transition. And I don't know that we had a question of whether moving to S4 HANA was what we were going to do or not, but how we were going to do that move and what infrastructure it was going to be hosted on was definitely a big decision point that a lot of people internally were nervous about, especially our technical basis team with the experience on HEC. We're really nervous about Rise, so we knew we needed to understand much more deeply what that was going to look like in reality. Getting past the sales pitch of the Rise team of like, we'll take care of everything for you, we'll do the hosting, and it's AWS, so it's familiar. We had to really dig more deeply into that to get people on our side to feel more comfortable. So we wanted to understand, what changes when we move from managing within our AWS environment to a Rise environment. What responsibilities start to shift in that model, and potentially what new risks really start to show up as well, which is, I'm sure, what a lot of people on the call today are thinking about those three questions as they look at their Rise, potential Rise move as well. So we did a couple things to dig into that a little bit more. We did some functional phase zeros with SAP services and PwC. Those gave us that high level path of how we were going to do the migration. And it gave us more of the functional side of things, which isn't necessarily relevant to today. But then we also did an advisory engagement with Lemongrass, where we really started to dig deeply into the infrastructure sizing that was showing up in the bill of materials, what we were buying, what we might be missing, and what the environment would actually look like and how it would behave in a Rise environment. And that's where some reality started to show itself, I think. We knew that Rise had a really long list of roles and responsibilities, and that really very specific and granular racy. I wasn't prepared for it to be over 1,200 lines long. So when we first got that from our SAP account team, we really needed to make sure we understood it in detail, what it meant for us. and doing that on our own was going to be really challenging. So we had Lemongrass there, of course, to help us understand, like, for each of these line items in this RACI document, what's it mean for us based on how you've been managing our environment for the past 7 years, and what's that mean, from our perspective of what might change. The other thing that's also important in that RACI is what's not covered. What is SAP not going to do for you in this RISE world? And for each one of those lines, you almost need to make a plan, either with your own internal resources, some outsourced resources, or just a partner to help manage it with you. Like, how will we tackle these things? So, those gaps started to be pretty significant once we started to look through it in more detail. Just some examples of, like, configuring single sign-on with our Windows Microsoft Active Directory setup, where all of our employees and their information and identities are maintained. Integration with our VPN, like a Zscaler type application, that's not something that the RISE team assists with. A whole list of BTP setup and configuration activities. The RISE team does not help with certain aspects of that. And then, setting up and configuring certain Fiori applications. Those are also not covered. And and there's some descriptions in that RACI document that start to call some of these things out. And I pulled one that I thought was kind of interesting. For the Fiori setup configuration, it says, due to the large variety of possible scenarios, this item is generally excluded from service. Customers should seek assistance through other services. And and that was a clue for us on what we really were going to need, right? We either needed, for things like that, where it's highly variable, it's going to be specific to what we need as a company. It makes sense. There's no way the RISE team could staff somebody that could understand how to set up and configure all the Fiori apps that all the customers could ever need. So, to be fair, I do understand why some of these things are not included. But we needed to take a look at all of those things and say, gosh, are we going to staff this resource internally? Or are we going to use somebody else, like a Lemongrass, to help us with this long term? Um, so that's kind of where we started to really understand that, RISE wasn't going to be plug and play. We still had a lot of work to close those gaps. Um, and and the RISE wrapper offering from Lemongrass started to feel like a really solid, like, risk mitigation, make us feel more comfortable about the move with a known player that has expertise in our environment and what we need, right at the table, in lockstep with us as we take this journey. So it started to feel like a no-brainer for us at that point specifically, right? They know the environment. They know why we configured things. They're still managing portions of our private AWS environment, things that aren't moving over to the RISE world. They know about our business, right? They know harvest and planting seasons in agriculture are big no-nos. We need uptime and high attention if there's any issues during those periods. And they know some of the weird things that we do in our environment that can cause problems if something is changed without being aware of some of those things, right? So, um, as I thought about that too, the RISE wrapper, it felt like, if you've had any experience submitting OSS tickets or OSS notes to SAP for, a question on a certain component or area of your application, that you think is not working correctly or you need some support on, RISE, I think, started to feel a little bit like that. You needed to understand the right component. There was going to be some lead time for them to get back to you and respond. The team might not be located geographically where you are, so there's some time zone complexity of when responses start to come through. Um, and having that experience as kind of a functional SAP person with the OSS notes, it really struck a chord in my mind of, like, if managing the RISE environment, submitting tickets to the RISE team is going to feel a lot like the OSS experience, we could definitely use some support there, because we really have stubbed our toe in that space frequently, in a variety of different ways. And that's what Lemongrass was offering with the RISE wrapper. Is we'll help manage that. Um, you know, we'll be the point of contact and make sure that we're chasing things down and are available, and we bring the familiarity of Growmark to the table, so that when somebody on the Rise team picks up our ticket or our request without much institutional knowledge of who Growmark is, what we need, and why we're asking for it, Lemongrass will have that, bring that context to the conversation with Rise, so that we don't have to kind of babysit that every single time we need something. So it serves a little bit like a safety net for us, I think, but it also helps us move more quickly because I don't have to have a set of 3 to 5 people internally at Growmark managing all of that complexity um, on our own. So
That's great. That's a great introduction to it. Obviously, we've got quite a few people on the call. Don't be afraid to stick your hand up, ask questions. If you want to put some in the chat as well, feel free to do that. But again, ideally, if you've got questions you can hear directly from somebody using it, feel free to do that. So Jordan, I think obviously when we set up and we started this conversation about doing the service, it's exactly what we wanted to hear. What you just said is that you saw this gap. What improvements would you make? I mean, where do you see that we could be doing more, and there's opportunities to make something like a Rise Wrapper even better? Like as you've maybe even going beyond the S4 system into some of the more SaaS areas, do you feel there's opportunity to do more there, or is it just a matter of this is pretty much a like for like to what we had before, and that's really the priority that you want to see at the minute?
I think one of the things that sticks out is there's going to be more complexity involved with our ecosystem of applications. So I think there's some potential there where, whether it's a ServiceNow or a Salesforce, or we're keeping business objects, SAP Webby, in our own environment. So I think as that complexity spans out, helping, from a Rise Wrapper perspective, coordinate some of those bidding applications that want to get in and access SAP information. And I don't know that it's doing anything better necessarily, because I think you guys do it really well today. But the other thing that sticks out to me is I've talked a lot about the the Growmark knowledge that comes with the Lemongrass side of things. But the other thing that's also super valuable is if we're working on some application within the BTP, you guys can also show up to that conversation with, here's what we've seen at customer ABC. We would recommend you do it this way, because if you don't, you're going to have a provisioning problem, or it's going to be a nightmare to do these activities. So you bring kind of that like hands-on experience from other customers of like, don't do it that way. It didn't work really well the last time we did that, or we ran into a problem. So kind of that broader knowledge of the market and the experience, I think, is really helpful. Not that you're not already doing that, but that's a big component of the Rise
No,
Wrapper in my experience.
yeah, I know everybody can improve, so we're always up for that. So a couple of questions coming in on the chat, which is great. Thanks, guys. So Johan from Ericsson, what was your migration experience? What did you do well, and where would you have prepared more if you would have done the migration or transformation migration again?
Yeah,
What about
so
that, Jordan?
yeah, we're still in the middle of our migration. We plan to go live on S4 HANA at the end of calendar 2026. So we're in the early days, but already what I would answer to that question is, from a leadership perspective on the project, I've been a little frustrated with the pace of the initial phase of the project, because getting the infrastructure established and set up so that you can actually get your hands on a system has taken longer than I expected. So I've got this project team of business analysts and consultants already, and we've been waiting for an environment to actually get our hands on and start looking at. So I think one of the lessons I learned is somehow, as you're planning for your project, maybe start that a lot earlier than you would expect. Get your technical team, your basis team, the Rise team, maybe the Lemongrass team involved early to get working on the actual environments, so that when you want to do your project kickoff, the kickoff that everybody expects a migration project to be, um, you can really hit the ground running. Because the way that we did it, it's felt like we started and then there was just a lull of activity while in the background we were basically putting all the bricks together for the foundation of what we actually needed.
Yeah, good. We've heard that from other customers as well, is that that initial uh, momentum can be slow. And the sooner you start it, the sooner you get all the inputs lined up, the more you can take that off the critical path. So yeah, good point, Jordan. Couple other questions coming in. Let me see. The RISE wrapper, is the RISE wrapper specifically for greenfield, brownfield, bluefield? If it's not greenfield, does the wrapper cover activating LOB's best practices? I'll answer that one. So the wrapper is more post-migrate or post-setup. And of course, it doesn't really matter how you got there, whether it was a greenfield, brownfield, bluefield, doesn't really matter. Ultimately, the wrapper is about the managed service, the ongoing support. I think when you're talking about a greenfield, activating best practices is part of the functional implementation. That's not part of the wrapper service. That'd be more like an implementation service. So hopefully that's clear, James. And then I think it's from Raj, is it? I heard saying that it isn't easy working with SAP and RISE. How did you get the grip on the complex catalog that SAP offers and to improve response from SAP? So Jordan, again, I think you touched on the complex catalog. What about response times? How are you finding that? I know you were still doing a subset of the systems as we stand, but to your point around OSS and the classic sort of responses there, do you feel that the responses have been okay so far from the RISE team?
Yeah, I think the responses have been they've been okay. And we have so many people involved at this part of our project. I think there's multiple things going on, to be completely fair to everybody at the table, of coordination between the groups, who's doing what, communication, what we expect. Um, the Rise team has SLAs, so you'll want to be extremely aware of the lead time that you need to make a certain request or get a response from them, um, which is a material difference. And I'm sure that's, we're well aware of that. It is well communicated. I think that's a big difference of the Rise world. Um, the success that we've had, I think, so far has been our key contact on the ECS team, the RISE team that's working with us. We worked with her closely right out of the gate to make sure she understood who we were, why this was important, how we want to work together, and tried to create her as a champion for us within that team. And that seems to be really successful. She will really go chase down things that are not moving as quickly as we need, to help us get things through, hopefully ahead of the published SLAs, because we're at a critical, juncture of the project or whatever the situation is. Um, so I think it's been okay. It's a learning curve, and if I'm being honest, the team is still definitely learning on the Rise side how to handle things internally, coordinating and orchestrating tickets and handoffs internally. That seems to be bumpy. We would expect that to improve as we go, and we're hitting them hard on that right now. Um, but we're making progress. It's just slower than we expected, whether that's because we're all learning, the RISE team is still learning. I can't necessarily say to date. It hasn't been perfect, but we're not, treating it as a critical blocker right now is maybe the best way to frame that up.
Well, good answer. Okay, well, I think those are the key questions I saw in the chat for now. Oh, actually, another question. What business or functional benefits can RISE offer? Towards something that I guess is quite a leading question, but I know you mentioned that S4 was very much a given in your strategy. Specifically on RISE, then are you able to share with Martin what you saw in terms of benefits or rationale for that.
Yeah, um, the Rise move, we made that decision at a point in time, and everything changes so quickly. This might still be true today. It might have moved and changed, but I think it's still true today. We made the decision to go to Rise basically at the time when SAP was publishing that was where new innovations, new updates, new features were going to be made available. And if you were using S4 HANA in an environment that is not Rise, um, you wouldn't have access to those. So we kind of took that as the business benefit of moving to Rise. Um, it also changes just depending on your environment, your location, the talent market that you have, your internal IT structure. It does kind of change the composition of what you need that team supporting the SAP application, sub application, to look like, right? I think we maybe need more of a resource that's going to chase down the tickets and keep everybody honest, working with Lemongrass, coordinating everything, understanding the SLAs, understanding the lead time, doing that forward planning. We need that type of resource more so than maybe more of a deep, skilled basis resource that maybe we would have needed in the past. So it kind of changes maybe the type of resources you need and what kind of talent pool you need to pull from that. Depending on your situation, that could be a business benefit. It might not be as well, right? But for us, that kind of changes who we staff and focus on this kind of activity long term as well. I'm not sure that helps, right? It was like, I want S4 HANA and I want to be on the version that SAP is actively releasing new functionality in. So I think we're going to go to Rise and we'll find ways to mitigate all of the risks and changes and things that we need um, to help support that and make sure we're successful long term.
Yeah, look, it's not an uncommon rationale, to be honest. Again, heard that from other customers too, that ultimately it is SAP's direction, and to the extent that you can achieve it, you'll get those side benefits of innovation with it. Couple of, I'm just conscious of time. I want to make sure we give plenty of time to Kevin. Kevin's no slouch when it comes to talking, so I want to make sure he gets plenty of space. But a couple of quick questions: is BDC part of the Rise wrapper? It will be. I mean, we can do DataSphere at the minute, but BDC is still not really pushed out there yet in many customers, but it will be. As we see customers starting to adopt BDC beyond the DataSphere layer. We already look after Databricks, for example, for some customers. So yeah, that would be extended, but not right today. Sanjay, I understand the advisory and communication ownership aspect of the Rise wrapper, but from an operational perspective, how does the wrapper service help with managing routine SAP basis infrastructure activities? And again, if you don't mind, Jordan, I'll answer that quickly just so we can move on to Kevin next. But ultimately, absolutely, your internal team could do this themselves. There's no doubt, right? As Jordan said, the experience is a bit like OSS. You have to be incredibly precise and very technical in the request. Otherwise, you can end up with a bit of ping pong back and forth. And that's what we're bringing, is the ability to translate, the knowledge of, in this case, Growmark and their business and their landscape, their IT landscape, translating that into the detail that the ECS team want to hear. So it saves your internal team having to do that work. So it's really a wrapper there, but also beyond, that's for the kind of day-to-day stuff that ECS does do. However, there's some stuff that they do that we don't need to obviously talk to them about. They just go on with it, and that's not part of the service, of course. So it's really filling gaps and trying to smooth the bumps that come with, a very rigid RAC that you get with Rise. Okay, so Jordan, thanks so much for sharing. And I mean, on your behalf, if you don't mind, obviously people, you've got Jordan's contact. I'm sure he's happy enough to deal with questions directly if you want to reach out to him. But Jordan, I'll just move on now to Kevin. Kevin, are you on video at the minute? I can't quite see you.
Yep, I'm here.
Cool. So Kevin, maybe again, just as Jordan just did, if you want to introduce yourself for the people who haven't met you yet. We really appreciate that, and as Jordan's done as well. Just sort of give us a bit of your journey here. Again, a customer that we're very fond of, worked with for many years at this stage, and help you along a number of different projects along the way. But we'd love to hear, again, in the same spirit, an honest appraisal of where you saw the needs, how you filled it with the Rise wrapper, and the good and the bad and the ugly of that. Again, to everybody in the crowd, just keep asking questions. Kevin's got a lot of experience, not just in this area. He's on the BTP Council, so he's got a lot of good context if you want to ask questions directly. So feel free. So Kevin, all yours.
Thanks, Eamon. So I'm Kevin Grelling. I'm the CIO of Florida Crystals. Just quickly, we're a sugarcane company. We grow sugarcane in Florida, and we refine it around the world in North America and Europe. And we've been an SAP customer for 30 years. We were probably the first sugar company in the world to put its ERP on SAP in the early 90s. And I'm joined with my colleague, Corey Swenson, who's our VP of Enterprise Systems and Data Analytics. And he is essentially our leader for all things SAP, whether they're ERP or our cloud platforms. So we've been using S/4HANA for 10 years. We've had a history over the last 30 years of really being first to use a lot of SAP's innovations or products. And we've had SAP in the cloud for almost 15 years now. The first 10 years, we had it in Virtustream's virtual private cloud, run by Virtustream. And then about 5 years ago, we moved to AWS, run by Lemongrass. And then in September, we upgraded to S/4HANA 2023. We were previously on 2020, and we moved it into SAP Rise. So we've been using SAP Rise now for a couple of months. And first thing I would say is for all of you that are running SAP either in your own in-sourced models, whether it's in your own data center with your own basis team, or whether it's in hybrid models, or whether it's in a fully outsourced model like us, the way to think about Rise versus another bring your own license model is really to think about it as the difference between what's commoditized and what's personalized. Our service with Lemongrass over the last 4 or 5 years has been a very personal service. There's automation, some great automation, in fact, but it's a personal service. And I think for many, many years, SAP has required it to be a very personal service. Most people's SAP implementations are customized differently than others, and running it has its own idiosyncrasies. So I think first thing to think about is SAP Rise will run what is truly commoditized within running SAP. And they will even run some of the more personalized services, but then you have a choice. Do you do that with SAP and you buy some of their additional services, or do you do it with a partner like Lemongrass, as Jordan and I have chosen to do? And I'd also add that SAP is actually pretty good at running the commoditized parts of SAP. In our experience, I'm going to curse it now, I'm quite superstitious with this stuff, but in our experience in the last 2 or 3 months, it's been very, very good. The migration to Rise is with the SAP team, a lot of it echoing what Jordan says, because it's a commoditized service, it's going to feel commoditized. So if the project's being run by the seat of your pants, you're going to be in pain, because SAP's ability to respond to poor planning or major issues that you might be having on the functional side and respond with speed is not the same as doing it yourself or doing it with Lemongrass or other managed technical services partners. So I would say our migration experience was not as good as it was when we migrated to AWS with Lemongrass 4 or 5 years ago. But okay, we definitely feel that there are some fussier ways of running SAP and SAP Rise than we've experienced before. We've run S4 for 10 years, as I say, VirtuStream, Lemongrass, and now SAP. Some of that might be the sins of the past, not looking after your SAP environment and upgrading from version to version, and not doing some of the things that were maybe more optional back then, and they are less optional as SAP becomes more strict with the way it runs SAP and RISE. And some of it, I think, is really the experience that you get when you're working with a company that's trying to run SAP for thousands of customers. They can't possibly understand the nuances of each customer's implementation, and during the migration stages, you're gonna hit some walls as you get into some of those areas. But I want to leave this with the thought or the fact that SAP can run SAP and SAP RISE very well. I don't think I'd want to be in a situation where SAP was doing everything for us from a managed technical services. I think that there is good to have some interdependence with another partner like Lemongrass. So we did a big analysis of the wrapper services with Lemongrass and the additional services with SAP, and we chose to use Lemongrass because of our experience in the previous 4 years, and also to have some interdependence. You know, with interdependence, you generally end up with a higher quality situation where Lemongrass we can look to Lemongrass to make sure that we keep ourselves and SAP honest on the way it's running. Okay. I think I'm going to guess now, I haven't done any surveys, but I'm going to guess that more than 70% of SAP implementations have some meaningful internal basis skills. We do not. We haven't had any internal basis resources for probably more than 10 years, right, Corey? So for us, we needed to make sure that everything that we needed with basis could be done by SAP or Lemongrass. You know, for example, managing the non-production environments. You know, SAP will manage a certain amount of that, but you need your own internal basis team or a partner like Lemongrass to do the parts that don't come along with that. The thought leadership that we've had with Lemongrass in the way to do certain things, we wanted to continue the access to that with the wrapper services. Being able to talk to people like Eamon and others in Lemongrass about certain strategic topics that we have in running our ERP environment, rather than just SAP, was an important part for us. And I think that's mostly what I would say in the time today on what the experience was. Again, building on what Jordan has been saying rather than repeating it. I would say whenever you partner with anyone, there is always a mixture of strategic, operational, and financial reasons to do so. And there's a certain one of those three areas is higher than the other. For example, when we partnered with Lemongrass to move it into AWS in 2021, there was a lot of operational and financial reasons for doing that. Running it in VirtuStream was costly. It was a virtual private cloud. The experience we had wasn't what we thought could be the best in terms of the thought leadership and the managed technical services. So for us, it was more operational, financial. Our decision for RISE was very strategic. I wouldn't say there was much operational thought in it at all, because we were very happy with the way Lemongrass had been running it for us for 3-4 years. There was some commercial benefits for sure, but for us, it was a very strategic reason. We want access to the ERP AI capabilities native to SAP. And we didn't want to be in a situation where we had to, our only choice was to recreate those capabilities with a third-party platform, right? So we wanted the optionality of it. I don't know yet whether those capabilities are going to be the best, and we only use SAP's native ERP capabilities when it comes to AI, but we certainly didn't want to be limiting ourselves from not being able to do. So for us, it was a very strategic decision rather than an operational or financial one. So to the question about the business functional benefits, that's the main one for us. The access it gives us to the SAP dual AI capabilities in ERP, in S4, not just in the cloud platforms that we use. Yeah,
I think, Kevin, just jumping in quick on that point, SAP have been publicly stated that RISE is not the end point. That they want to see people get to public cloud. Somebody asked a question about Pro earlier. It was really the project to get you to the public cloud. And I know you and I have chatted about this a bit, and Corey as well, around what's your appetite for that, etc. I mean, it might be good to share your views on that aspect as well. That there's a couple of next steps still to do.
Yeah, I think so full transparency, we wanted to move to SAP public cloud, S4 public cloud in 2018. 4 versions of the branding ago, whatever they were calling it back then. I think it was multi-tenant, MTS, right? Multi-tenant services. But the technical limitations of the public cloud version of S4 were just prohibitive. For example, you couldn't even have companies with different fiscal years back then. And when RISE was actually published as a brand, I was very vocal with people like Lemongrass and other customers that no way are we going to RISE. I'd heard so many horror stories about heck, and we didn't want to put our eggs in one basket with SAP before they'd proven that they could run SAP. And I think very much so, SAP have proven they can run SAP. We are not the biggest customer on it. There are multiple customers on SAP RISE, complex customers like BMW or HP or others, and simple customers like us. So I think that is pretty much put to bed now that they can run it. The destination for us is always going to be software as a service. 80–90% of the applications we use are software as a service, and we still want that to be our destination for our ERP. So what we said after finishing SAP RISE is our next upgrade will be to S4 public cloud. I think they call it CEP now, Cloud Enterprise Public or something like that. I've given it another name. I'm sure by the time we get there, it'll be another name.
ERP.
Cloud ERP, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Cloud ERP Public.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the Google Translate isn't helping when it translates it from German to English, but the branding does need some work, right? But yeah, so I think we are hopeful, and we're going to do the scientific analysis that our next upgrade to S4 2027 or 28 will be into the Cloud ERP public platform. There is actually a Midwestern sugar company called Western Sugar, about $500 million revenue company, and just a US company that actually is already in Cloud ERP public. So we know it's technically possible. Probably not for every company or customer of SAP, but we believe it will be for us. So yeah, it's definitely our new strategic destination until proven otherwise. Corey, is there anything that I've missed that you would add that is a build on what I've said and what Jordan said?
You guys have covered it pretty well, I think. I think the only thing that I would add is our experience, right? So we are a migrated customer. We went live September 1st. So I think maybe that's the difference between Growmark and ourselves. And as Kevin said, I think we had some initial performance issues the first month, and the learning really related to that was doing some of the between the Lemongrass team and the SAP team, really doing some additional due diligence. We probably could have avoided some of the problems that we had if we did a bit more due diligence on some of the pieces of that SAP provides you. So I think that would be our key learning. There's some things that avoided. But generally, things have gone very well. I'll just build on the fact that we used Lemongrass as our basis team. So we have not engaged SAP on any of their cloud application, their CAS packages, right? We use Lemongrass for those. So we really only use SAP for the things that SAP has to do, right? Where there's no other option. SAP has to do the particular service. We use Lemongrass for everything else with the wrapper service.
Yeah. So a couple of ads for me. I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, I've covered the part about the migration is going to be the more painful part. Even if you're an S4 customer like we were running on S4 S4 2020 when we moved to 2023. We were surprised that it was as fussy of an upgrade as it ended up being. I would like to see more automation from SAP in the migration path. I think there's a lot of technical actions as part of the planning of the migration and actually the cutover that could be automated. We've discussed this within the Lemongrass Advisory Board. And I think Lemongrass are actually giving SAP some thought leadership on how that might be achieved. Just some simple things that you haven't seen maybe for many, many years, like human errors that could easily be avoided with more automation around the configuration and the execution of the migration path. And I think that's mostly it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
No, that's great, Kevin. Corey, thanks again. Always love hearing these stories because I learn things from you guys every time you speak about it that I hadn't known. So again, thanks so much. Matten's asked a question: is the wrapper service a custom tailored service, or is it more standard framework based on RISE best practice? So the way to look at it is the RISE RACI is rigid, effectively, and we put in the wrapper to fill in the gaps, but it's a custom wrapper. So you mentioned, can it be industry specific? Absolutely. If there's specific, Jordan mentioned around the seasons for Growmark being critical planning phases, and we understand that. So our wrapper will take that into account, for example. So yeah, it's very much trying to reintroduce a white glove element, as it were, to the very standard service and race you get from SAP.
The thing I wanted to add, Eamon, was and for people that have very, very smart internal basis teams, this may be a familiar experience. But now that we're in the situation where we have SAP running the core managed technical services and Lemongrass doing the wrapper around it, Lemongrass is always going to be a more personal service. And it's always going to have people that are going to respond probably quicker than the SAP RISE team will. So I think you have to figure out, I'm sure each customer has a lot of it that is the same and some of it is different. You have to figure out where the responsible, accountable parts are. Because during the first month, we had quite a few technical issues, HANA database tuning and things like that. And it was great to have the Lemongrass team there to be first responders, even though some of the things that required fixing were core SAP RISE responsibilities. So what I'm elaborating here is, if you add up the core services from SAP RISE and the wrapper services, it's not designed to overlap a lot for obvious reasons, right? It would be inefficient to do that. But what you get also is an insurance policy that if you have some critical issues, you've got a partner other than SAP to lean on. If you really need it, you really need that depth of thinking. The downside to that is if the personalized service with Lemongrass is always going to be more responsive, more whatever you want to call it, you have to find an equilibrium. Once you get into day-to-day running with no issues, like we've been in for now for about 6, 7, 8 weeks, you need to find an equilibrium where you don't just rely upon that personal service. You actually hold SAP Rise accountable for the things that they should be accountable for. So that's been a learning for us. I'm sure, Raymond, it's been a learning for the Lemongrass team. And I'm sure as customers that migrate next year and the year after, they will get the benefits of that experiential learning for both SAP and any partners that they choose to do wrapper services with.
So it's it's a really good observation. Something you only really becomes aware, as you say, as you're running. Any other improvements, Kevin, you would be recommended? Any other things you think between us we should be thinking about helping out with in terms of the wrapper?
I think we need, Corey can add, but my personal opinion is we need more time to figure that out. We've only been doing it 2 or 3 months now. And so I'm not thinking about the migration. I think there was a lot of learnings from the migration path for both Lemongrass and SAP. And I think we've got a meeting next week to finalize that. But in terms of the run path, I think we need a bit more time. But if there's anything, it will probably fall in the camp of making sure the lines of demarcation on who is doing what are clearer, potentially. But we'll see. Corey, anything you would add?
Well, that's good. Yeah, Corey.
Yeah, no, I would agree to that. I think I would add that I think the areas when you move on to Rise, SAP as you all know is very siloed. So they have their ECS team that will only do what you have provisioned in ECS Rise. So if you, like all of us, we have a lot of other things, and that's where. I mean, we have. The Rise wrapper is designed for the piece that covers what you have in Rise, but I think all of us have much more than that. So I think that's what you need to keep in mind. But I think, yeah, it's early days for us with SAP and Rise. I think we've learned quite a bit thus far. We'll learn a lot more and have some additional suggestions coming.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Corey and Kevin again. So as we come to the end of the call, just want to, I guess, wrap up. Again, the purpose of this forum, it's meant to be a quick discussion where you can see some real life customers who are really doing the things that maybe some of you on the call are planning. Of course, reach out to us if you have any following questions, you want to learn anything else. I see there's a couple in the chat. But again, on behalf of Kevin and Jordan, I think they've been very active in the community as well. They're always very happy to contribute, answer questions too. So feel free on their behalf. I'm offering that to reach out to them. And beyond that, I just want to say thanks again to our guests and thanks to everybody for attending. I think there's a recording here, so I'm not sure if we're going to share that or not, but certainly if anybody who wants to say it, just reach out. We'll get you a copy. And beyond that, I will just say thanks and have a good rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.